I'm Devin. I'm 29, and up until last Sunday, I thought my family was complicated, not criminal. It started at a backyard BBQ, the kind my family throws when someone graduates. Someone dies, or when grandma gets bored and wants to remind us she's still in charge. This one was under the guise of celebrating my cousin James getting a new job. The grill was fired up, kids ran around with dripping popsicles, and everyone was complaining about the heat while refusing to go inside. I wasn't expecting anything. I was just there to be present, eat a burger, maybe help Grandpa find his sunglasses. That's my usual role in visible helper. Background guy. But then Grandma raised her plastic cup of lemonade and said loudly, almost too cheerfully, "Well, at least Devin's car loan is finally paid off $14,000 down the drain, but he's worth it." I blinked. "Grandma," I said cautiously, "I don't have a car." The table went silent. Not polite silence, the kind of silence that yells. She looked confused, glanced to her left, just a flicker of panic in her eyes. And that's when my younger sister Nicole walked in from the driveway, holding keys, shiny, brand new with a dealership fob still attached. She grinned oblivious. "Guys, check it out," she said, swinging the keys like a prize. Nobody spoke. Not my mom, who had just been slicing watermelon. Not my dad, who stared down at his plate like it held all the answers. Not even my Uncle Lou, who normally can't resist drama. Nicole looked at me and gave a guilty half-smile. "I was going to tell you," she mumbled. 2 hours later, everyone was inside watching a TikTok compilation on the TV I bought them last Christmas. I stepped out onto the porch, opened my bank app, and checked the loan account I never use. Approved, cleared, $14,000, my name. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just took a screenshot, time-stamped it. When I looked up, Grandma was coming toward me. No smile now. She reached into her purse, pulled out a thick envelope, and slid it onto the table beside me without saying a word. Inside were copies of contracts, dealership paperwork, insurance plans. All signed by me, only I hadn't signed a single thing. That night at 2:03 a.m., my phone lit up 18 texts. 7 missed calls, a voicemail from Nicole that started with, "Please don't freak out." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already gone cold. The envelope stayed on my kitchen counter for days. I couldn't touch it. It felt like opening it would make everything real. On the third night, I finally did. And what I found inside changed everything. It wasn't just the car. It was the electric bill from last winter that Mom said was a double charge glitch. It was the Spotify family plan still billing me even after I deleted everyone's profiles. It was the just for a month $800 for Nicole's tuition that was never brought up again. Every favor I'd done had turned into a permission slip. Every silence became consent. And the worst part, they knew. They all knew. I wasn't a son, I wasn't a brother, I was a line of credit. But not anymore. Because this time they forged my name. This time I wasn't going to be quiet. After that backyard ambush, something in me broke, not in a loud, dramatic way. Quietly, like a pressure valve finally hissing shut. I went back to my apartment that night and didn't say a word. Not to Nicole, not to Grandma, not to anyone. The envelope with all the forged paperwork just sat on my kitchen counter like some cursed artifact. I didn't touch it at first. Just stared at it while drinking old coffee and letting my head loop every moment from the barbecue. The fake cheer in Grandma's voice, the silence when I said I don't have a car, Nicole holding up the keys like a prize from a rigged game. By night 3, I cracked the envelope open. That's when the pattern came into focus. The forged documents weren't just a one-off. That fake signature, I recognized it. Sloppily traced from an old lease agreement I'd signed back when I was 22. They hadn't even bothered to disguise it. My name, my info, my financial details all copied and pasted like I was a spreadsheet, not a person. The more I looked, the more it unraveled. There was the water bill from last November. Mom had said it must be a system error when I asked why it was 3x the usual. Turned out they'd added their address to my utility account. There was a Hulu account I hadn't logged into in months, except someone was using it to stream every episode of 90 Day Fiancé on my card. Even the student loan payment I thought I was helping Nicole with for one semester, turns out she listed me as a cosigner without asking. Payments kept going out, quietly, predictably. Every dollar I gave became a debt I never agreed to. Every silence became consent. Every nod, every don't worry about it. Every time I told myself, it's just family, it all became leverage against me. I wasn't family, I was infrastructure. I sat on the floor that night, back against the fridge, and I couldn't stop thinking about every time I said yes just to keep the peace. You want peace? Peace doesn't come from silence. So I started making noise. First step, control the damage. I pulled up every account I had: bank utilities, streaming services, credit cards, and started locking them down. New passwords, 2-factor authentication. Any shared logins gone. The family Netflix profile deleted. Disney Plus downgraded to free tier. Grandma's soap operas were about to get some ads. I canceled every autopay they'd piggybacked on Wi-Fi, Spotify, Amazon Prime. Password manager reset. Every shared device disconnected. Within a few hours, the calls started. Mom. Hey, is something wrong with the Wi-Fi, Nicole? Why can't I log into HBO Max? Dad did the thermostat reset? It's freezing in here. I didn't reply, I wasn't done. You know what else was under my name? Their mortgage. Yeah. Back when things were tight and Dad needed just a co-signer to qualify. That was 4 years ago, or years. I logged into the lender portal and started the paperwork to remove myself. The request flagged an automatic review. The bank rep called me the next day. Hi, Devin. Just a heads up, removing yourself from the mortgage may affect the household's ability to meet requirements. Good, I said. Let them meet their own requirements. 2 days later, I got an updated estimate. Their payment would jump 40. I didn't tell them. Let them open that email with their morning coffee. The car was the last straw. I called the dealership and asked for their fraud department. Hi, I think a vehicle was purchased under my name without my consent. The guy on the other end paused. Is this Devin Miller? Yeah. Long sigh, I figured you'd call. They'd seen this before. Family fraud wasn't rare. It was just rarely reported. You're technically the owner, he said. Then I want the vehicle repossessed tonight. We'll dispatch a tow, any further legal action. Not yet, I said, but keep everything on file. When the car got towed from my parents' driveway at 3 a.m., Nicole sent a storm of texts, then a voice note. Why are you doing this? I thought you'd understand. I didn't think you'd actually take it. Exactly, that was the problem. They never thought I'd actually do anything. They thought I'd roll over, like always. But I wasn't angry. I was done. The day after the car disappeared, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, voicemails, messages from numbers I didn't even recognize. Extended family I hadn't talked to in years suddenly felt very invested in what's going on. Nicole's text was the first they towed the car. I didn't think it'd be like this. Please, we need to talk. Then Mom, please call. There's been a misunderstanding. Then Dad, predictably blunt, you're being childish, embarrassing yourself. I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to hurt anyone, but because for the first time I wasn't cleaning up the mess. I wasn't rushing in to smooth over their screw-ups with a calm voice and my debit card. And that silence. It hit them harder than anything I could have said. I'd always been the buffer. The bridge, the peacemaker. It started small, covering a bounce check, transferring a little extra for groceries. It's temporary, Dad would say. You're so responsible, Mom would add, like that was a compliment and not a weapon. But what they called support had become expectation. What they called love had become extraction. They didn't see me as someone to protect. They saw me as a resource to mine. And now the mine was closed. I started reviewing every account I'd ever opened on their behalf. My name was on their home business insurance. I pulled the records, canceled the policy, and notified the provider of unauthorized use. Their side hustle, some chaotic combo of tax prep and homemade catering, was running off a website I had registered and hosted. I transferred the domain to a private server, shut it down. Years of unpaid labor erased with 2 clicks. I didn't owe them bandwidth anymore. I pulled the old lease on their storage unit. Yep, my name. I called revoked access and scheduled a lock change. Half the family's heirlooms were in there supposedly. They'd find out soon enough. They thought I was going nuclear. I wasn't. I was just turning off the tap. They were the ones who'd been quietly lighting fuses for years. I was just stepping back and letting the fire do what it was always going to. Then came the fallout. Aunt Laura posted a thinly veiled status, sad when family chooses drama over forgiveness. But some of us don't need to be taught a lesson. That was followed by Nicole's Instagram story, a crying selfie mascara streaks captioned, "Heartbroken. Don't believe everything you hear." The comments poured in. You deserve better. Cutting toxic people is hard but necessary. I watched the narrative twist in real time. I was being painted as the villain, the unstable one, the dramatic brother who couldn't take a joke and overreacted to a minor mistake. That's the game, right? They mess up, you call it out. Suddenly you're the problem. They underestimated me again. I compiled everything. The loan approvals, the fake signature forms, screenshots of charges, timestamps of forged activity, the dealership's confirmation, the call logs. I didn't post it, not yet. I didn't have to. I wasn't trying to ruin anyone's life. I was just making sure if they ever tried to flip the story in a legal setting, I had receipts. I labeled the folder Financial Use Unapproved. I sent copies to my lawyer, my accountant, and the fraud department of my bank. Just in case. Because I knew what was coming next. Sure enough, by Friday, I got an email. Subject line regarding allegations. It was from a Gmail my mother barely knew how to use. The message inside was sharp. This wasn't fraud, it was family. If you pursue this, we will defend ourselves. You've taken this too far. Signed with her full name like she was a stranger. No love, mom. No warmth. Just legal-sounding threat dressed as hurt. They thought that would scare me. They still didn't get it. I wasn't scared. I was calm. Because when you've been the quiet one your whole life, the one who never explodes, never confronts, never pushes back, your silence becomes a currency. And when you finally spend it, when you finally say no more, it hits with the force of a lifetime. That weekend, I checked my mail and found a physical letter addressed in my dad's handwriting. Inside was a single line. We're reaching out because we still believe in forgiveness. Don't let this be your legacy. Legacy. That word stopped me. Because my legacy had been silence. My legacy had been absorption. Absorbing blame, absorbing debt, absorbing discomfort so they didn't have to feel it. Not anymore. I didn't open their calls. I didn't reply to their guilt-riddled texts. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer. We reviewed everything: fraud possibilities, civil boundaries, preemptive protections. He asked, "Do you want to press charges?" I didn't hesitate. No. But I want to be ready if they do. Smart, he said. They won't expect that. And he was right. Because what they expected, what they always expected, was a return to normal. They thought I'd reset the password fix, the bills send another payment, and sigh while doing it. They thought eventually I'd cave, that I'd hear Nicole crying or see mom's carefully crafted Facebook post about family being forever, and I'd fold like I always did. But I didn't, because I wasn't trying to destroy them. I was just done funding the fantasy. By the start of the next week, the tone changed. The outrage had burned itself out. Now came the bargaining. The calls weren't angry anymore, they were pleading. Nicole's texts turned soft. "We didn't mean to hurt you. It was just easier that way. Please talk to us. I'm scared." Mom left a voicemail whispering like someone had died. "You've made your point. We just want to talk. Please don't do anything drastic." Drastic. That's what they called boundaries now. The desperation came not from guilt, but from instability. I had become their structure. And when I stepped away, the walls didn't just crack, they started to cave. Nicole messaged me again. "Are you done? Because I'm about to lose everything." I stared at it for a while, typed out, "No," then deleted it. Not because I softened, but because I realized something colder. They were asking the wrong question. It wasn't about what I was doing to them. It was about what I refused to keep doing for them. And the answer to that was final. Still, I stayed silent. Not out of spite, out of strategy. Because the more they talked, the more they revealed. They went from confusion to spin in record time. First came the rumors. A second cousin messaged me. "Hey, your sister said you're suing the whole family. I hadn't even spoken to a lawyer beyond preparation." But the panic had started to mutate. They began rewriting history while it was still happening. Then came the Instagram post. Nicole again. Soft lighting tears a perfectly captioned breakdown. It's hard when the people who are supposed to be your home turn out to be your lesson. I still believe in healing, but not everyone wants peace. Within hours, the comments lit up. "You're so strong. Protect your peace, girl." Friends reposted it. Aunts shared it with vague captions like, "Sending love to those who need it most." And just like that, the public version of the story took shape. I was the cold brother, the one who stole back a car like it was a toy, who shut off the family Wi-Fi, killed the Netflix accounts, and went scorched earth over a disagreement. I watched it unfold without flinching. Because I already knew this game. It was the same one they played every time someone held up a mirror. Rewrite the story. Make the one who says no into the one who needs help. But they forgot one thing. I had the truth. Not just the feeling of being used. I had the documents. The paper trail, the call logs, the dealership approval with a forged signature, the streaming bills, the credit reports, the fake accounts. I had the folder Grandma tried to pretend didn't exist. And I had something more dangerous than rage. I had credibility. So I built a timeline. Clean, factual, timestamps, screenshots, signatures. I didn't put it on Instagram. I posted it to LinkedIn. Not because I wanted attention, but because that's where my professional contacts lived. That's where my reputation mattered. I titled it, "When Family Crosses a Line, a Thread on Financial Exploitation and Identity Misuse." Then I laid it out. The forged loan. The car. The false accounts. The silence. The backlash. The punishment for saying no. I didn't name names, but anyone close enough to know us, they knew exactly who I meant. By midnight, the post had over 18,000 views. By the next day, 32,000. Then the messages started, but not from strangers. From people I hadn't heard from in years. Coworkers, former classmates. even a cousin I hadn't seen since high school. They didn't reach out with judgment. They wrote things like, "Thank you for posting this. I thought I was the only one." One guy wrote, "My brother used my info to open 2 credit cards. My parents told me not to make waves." A woman said, "My dad borrowed my student loan money and disappeared." When I tried to report it, the family said I was ruining his life. I hadn't just shared a story, I'd hit a nerve. Meanwhile, my family panicked. My inbox filled with messages from unknown Gmail accounts. Blocked numbers left voicemails with that strained mix of anger and fear. Nicole texted again, "You made this public. That's messed up. You've always needed control." Dad sent an email with a subject line that just said, "Take it down." Inside one sentence, "If you think this makes you look strong, you're wrong. You're embarrassing us." He signed it with his full name, no greeting, no goodbye, like a cease and desist dressed as concern. I didn't reply, I pinned the post. Then I sent the PDF folder, every receipt, every screenshot, every form to their family accountant. No warning, just a short message. "In case of audit or future filings, please note, I did not authorize or benefit from any of the following transactions. Documentation attached. Fraud report pending?" I wasn't accusing, I wasn't threatening, I was documenting. Because I knew they'd try to spin this into a misunderstanding. They always did. But you can't gaslight a ledger, you can't guilt trip a timestamp. And they weren't ready for what came next. My cousin Ellie called me. Quiet voice, shaky. I saw everything she said. Then paused. "You should know, they're saying things. That you're unstable, that you're building a revenge fund, that you're trying to destroy the family." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so familiar. That was their final defense. Not apology, not reflection, just character assassination. If they couldn't control me, they'd discredit me, make me the story, the unstable one, the bitter one, the dangerous one. But they forgot I wasn't alone anymore. Because once you speak the truth out loud, you stop being invisible. People see you, not just the ones who want to hurt you, but the ones who needed to hear you. My inbox was proof. My comment section was proof. Every thank you for saying it was proof that the silence they relied on wasn't just mine. It belonged to so many people who were done absorbing. So when Nicole texted me one last time, all she said was, "I hope it was worth it." And for the first time in months, I answered. It wasn't worth it. It was necessary. It was a Sunday, quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something. I was drinking coffee by the window, scrolling through messages from people I'd never met, but somehow knew exactly how I felt. Messages like, "They used me too," or "My parents did the same," and everyone told me I was dramatic. Each one reminded me that what happened wasn't rare, it was just usually buried under shame and silence. I wasn't special, I was just done pretending it was okay. The doorbell rang at 9:13 a.m. No buzz, no warning. Just one clean ring, like it wasn't a demand but a declaration. I knew who it was before I even stood up. There's a certain energy people bring when they think they're arriving for a reckoning but still believe they have the upper hand. That self-righteousness they wear like armor. I opened the door slowly, and there they were. Mom, Dad, Nicole, all standing in a perfect line like they were posing for a family portrait with grief as the theme. Nicole had sunglasses on even though it was overcast. Mom was holding a ba. Dad's hands were in his pockets, his jaw clenched like he was waiting to be insulted before he'd pretend to feel hurt. No one smiled. No one blinked. Just 3 people who once thought they owned me waiting to be let back in. Dad spoke first. "We just want to talk." I didn't answer. I stepped outside, shut the door behind me. Not inviting, not aggressive, just clear. I wasn't bringing this conversation into my home. That boundary was non-negotiable. Mom held out the box. It's everything she said. The receipts, the title, the accounts. "We're closing them. We're trying to make it right." Her voice had the edge of rehearsed sincerity, like someone trying to win an audition they thought was rigged against them. I didn't reach for the box. I didn't even look at it. Because it wasn't about paper anymore. It wasn't about fixing the records. It was about how long they thought they could get away with it and how certain they were I'd never push back. They didn't come for repair. They came for control. They just changed the costume. Mom started to talk again, but I cut her off. "You didn't lose a car," I said to my dad. "You lost the right to ask." He looked stunned. Not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. And he wasn't used to honesty that didn't serve him. Then I turned to Mama. "You didn't lose a son. You lost your silent shield." Her mouth opened slightly like she wanted to object, but what could she say? That she didn't mean it, that they panicked, that it was love. No amount of spin could undo what they did when they thought I'd stay quiet. Finally, I looked at Nicole. Her lips were tight, her shoulders pulled in. And for a second, I saw something behind her eyes. Not guilt, Not sadness, fear, real fear. Because she knew the mask had slipped, the game was over, and she wasn't ready to live in the world where I didn't play along. I had to redefine what I could give, I said quietly. Because what you took wasn't money, it was belief. They didn't move. They stood there waiting for the crack, the shift, the voice that would say, "But you're still my family like it always had." But I didn't give them that. "There's no going back," I said. "Not because I hate you, but because I finally like myself too much to crawl back into that cage." Mom whispered, "So this is it?" I nodded. No dramatic speech, no slam of the door, just that. Dad looked at me like I was someone he'd never met. And he was right. The person he remembered would have offered to drive them home after this, would have handed them cash for gas, would have said, "Let's just move on." But that man didn't live here anymore. He left the second they forged his name and smiled through the lie. They left without another word. No tears, no yelling. Just the soft crunch of footsteps retreating down the driveway and the echo of a car door closing a little too hard. I didn't watch them leave. I didn't wait for a second knock. I just turned around, walked back inside, and sat down with my coffee. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It felt clean, like air after a storm, like a space I had finally cleared out for myself. That afternoon, I opened the box they left. Not because I needed to, but because closure for me didn't come from confrontation. It came from seeing with clear eyes. Inside were the documents, the loan closure notice, the car title now corrected, the insurance cancellation. A short note scribbled in Nicole's handwriting. Just 5 words I didn't think you'd fight. Exactly. That was the rot at the root of all of it. They thought kindness was a weakness, that silence was permission, that family meant immunity from consequences. They built a system where I gave and they took, and they called it tradition. But tradition without respect is just ritualized harm. And I wasn't a vessel anymore. I wasn't a background character. I wasn't the family's backup generator. I was someone who said no. I shredded the documents, not out of spite, but because I no longer needed proof. I had the story, the truth, the receipts, and more importantly, I had my own voice. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone. And that freedom, that was the real inheritance. I didn't expect the quiet to feel this full. I thought cutting them off would leave a hole. Instead, it felt like a wound that had finally stopped bleeding. I woke up not bracing for a phone call. I made coffee without checking my account for surprise charges. My days no longer bent around unspoken obligations, and that stillness, that absence of weight felt like something I'd been chasing without knowing its name. For a while, I kept waiting for the regret to show up. It never did. They didn't come back, not physically, but the attempts kept arriving through other people. My Aunt Susan emailed a photo of me and Nicole as kids. "I hope you remember the good times," she wrote, like nostalgia could overwrite betrayal. An old family friend sent a long message with phrases like, "Life's too short and forgive before it's too late." I read them all, then archived each one, not to avoid the past, but to preserve the boundary. Because forgiveness without accountability is just another version of being used. They still didn't understand. I didn't burn the bridge. I left it standing, marked it unsafe, and chose not to cross again. The story didn't end the way they hoped. There was no public apology, no dramatic reunion, no teary confession under dim kitchen lights. They thought time would be enough, that if they stayed quiet long enough, I'd miss them more than I valued my own peace. But time doesn't fix things people won't face. Months passed. I kept working, kept building. I launched a side project I'd shelved for years. An online toolkit for people recovering from financial abuse, especially within families. It wasn't flashy, but it grew. Quietly, steadily. Messages poured in, stories eerily similar to mine. Different names, same playbook. It made something clear: I wasn't the only one raised to believe that loyalty meant sacrifice. That silence was love, that being useful was the price of belonging. And when I told my story, it gave others permission to tell theirs. Then one day I got an email from a lawyer, not mine, theirs. A soft threat wrapped in legal phrasing. Something about defamation potential damages a pattern of online behavior with reputational impact. I sent it to my attorney without comment. His response was 2 sentences: "They won't win. Let them try." They didn't try, because it was never about the law. It was about fear. About seeing me do what they always assumed I wouldn't. Speak, refuse, walk away. Their power came from assumption, and I'd shattered that without yelling. That silence, the one they used for years, was now working against them. And so the house of cards stood still, fragile, untouched. But everyone knew one gust of truth could knock it down. The last time Nicole reached out, it was through a third party. A mutual friend. She said Nicole was going to therapy. That she'd started writing letters she wasn't sure she'd ever send. That she wasn't ready to apologize but hoped I knew she'd changed. I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I did. And I'd spent enough of my life caring without being cared for back. Some things need to stay unsaid because the saying of them would undo the strength it took to survive in silence. And still I wasn't angry. Anger would have given them too much. I wasn't interested in revenge, I wasn't interested in making them hurt. I was only interested in never being hurt by them again. There's this idea that cutting family off is cruel, that no matter what, blood should bind. But what they never say out loud is that the same blood can choke you, that the same hands that held you as a baby can forge your name on a loan 20 years later. That being born into a group doesn't mean you owe them your identity. Family is not a passcode, it's a privilege, and they lost it. I never published the full story. Not the receipts, not the screenshots. I didn't need to. The truth didn't need to be screamed. It just needed to be said once clearly and then let go. That post on LinkedIn, it's still there, still pinned. But I never updated it, I never added names. Because I didn't want attention, I wanted air, and I finally had it. Years from now, if someone asks why I walked away, I won't launch into a saga. I'll just say this, I gave them everything. They took more, then they pretended not to notice. So I stopped giving. And what they missed wasn't me, it was the convenience I used to provide. They didn't miss my birthday this year. I know because I got a message from Mom on the day. One line. Thinking of you. Hope you're well. It didn't say she missed me. It didn't say she was sorry. It just said what it always said. Look, I acknowledged you, now come back. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted her to hurt, but because I didn't. That was the victory. That was the revenge. Not making them pay. Just finally not paying for them anymore. Story 2, 5 years in a row. My birthday was inadvertently forgotten. Nothing. No cake, no calls, a dot. In any case, I brought cake this time. Sorry you have the wrong house, my sister responded as she answered the door and gave me a quick glance. Then, without saying another word, closed it. Mom texted us hours later saying, "We told her fiance you don't exist." We had to keep him from seeing you, I answered. I get it. I wrote her fiance a letter, banned the wedding payments, and frozen their accounts. The hole in my gut was heavier than the cake box, which felt weighty in my hands. I was standing outside my sister's house, clouding of breath in the chilly air. My heart is pounding as if I've just finished a marathon. Frosted chocolate, personalized with my name inscribed in gold. 32 candles for a birthday that I no longer even wanted to commemorate. Nevertheless, I carried it in case my hands started to perspire. Absurd. I anticipated what would happen. I'd been acquainted for 5 years. 5 years, not even a text or a call, not even a Slack, Facebook happy birthday. Just quiet. Suffocating, quiet, deliberate. Nevertheless, I checked my phone on December 9th every year, just like clockwork. I would offer justifications. They could be occupied. Perhaps they forgot once more. Next year, perhaps, not this time though. I brought the cake this year. I arrived. The door opened. My sister appeared to have seen a ghost as she stood there with a wine glass in her cream jumper dress. She glanced at the cake, then my face again. She blinked. Apologies. You live in the incorrect house. She shut the door after that. Like that, no justification, no embarrassment. A door right in front of me. I remained there a little longer till I nearly burst out laughing. Nearly. Rather, I walked back to my car after turning around. My heart is racing more than it used to. My phone died before I had even left her street. Mom was the one. One phrase, one text. You don't exist, her fiancé, we informed him. We had to keep him from seeing you. I refrained from crying. I refrained from screaming. The cake wasn't thrown by me. I answered with 2 words that made sense to me. Then I stopped. Froze the shared wedding account after logging in. Blocked all money transfers. Each transaction was flagged. They desired for me to be invisible. All right, they wouldn't anticipate this either. And to be thorough, I sent a letter and something more to her fiancé. They truly didn't want him to see it. Caleb is my name. 32. The oddball in the household. The one they don't bring up at gatherings, not because I pose a threat. I didn't comply, not because I did something that couldn't be forgiven. I was the child who wouldn't pretend that my father's yelling was commonplace. Uncle Rick's quips about homosexual people made everyone chuckle. The person who declined the scholarship to attend a business school. Because I didn't want to give their legacy company my soul. Instead, I built a 6-figure laptop business and became a freelance developer. Silently by themselves. They detested that. I succeeded in spite of them, not because I failed, as I didn't require them. The saddest part is that I no longer act like they were decent people. Birthdays were the first. They forgot the first year. Yes, we believed we had texted you throughout your second year. You said you were doing nothing, didn't you, third year? Caleb, it's only a day. Avoid being dramatic. I stopped expecting by year 5. On my birthday, I didn't even check social media. I waited for the guilt storm that never materialized while working a cheap sushi job. For her half-birthday, my sister even received a fully catered brunch. Personalized invitations, tower of champagne, a string quartet even. Mom blinked and said, "Oh, honey, was that today? When I asked if she could recall the day. She wasn't kidding. It wasn't the forgetting that was particularly painful, the coordination was the problem. They moved in circles around one another as if she were the sun. How they removed me from pictures, family news, and trip itinerary updates. That's just more convenient. I asked why I wasn't invited to a cousin's wedding, my father once said. Simpler. They were very skilled at acting as though I didn't exist. They made it their full-time job. Even got engaged the previous year, a large diamond from Lucas, a finance bro. A true charmer. He appeared to have stepped out of a Rolex watch. When I saw the post, I messaged her. Well done. I'm glad for you. She never responded, but I continued to be the responsible one even after they cut me off, so I quietly assisted. The bank account that is invisible, the ghost of the family. They were unaware that I had contributed 40% of their wedding budget. When Mom mentioned they were a little short on venue deposits, I had arranged it months prior. I did it for no gratitude. I knew how they worked, so I did it. They desired large, glossy lenses. Their goal was to appear like the ideal family. And if they would at least stop guilt-tripping me for being aloof and cold, I was prepared to pay for the lie. However, we informed her fiancé that she didn't exist after she shut the door and her mother texted what she had done. Something inside of me exploded like a live wire at that moment. To save face, they brought me up. They changed the course of history for outsiders. They said I didn't matter after giving me a direct look, but now I am important. The wedding fonts weren't simply frozen by me. I wanted to regain access to the shared planning account, so I began unwinding all of the emails, transactions, and receipts that demonstrated that I had been using anonymous family donations to pay for items. My initials were on the ledger for every vendor that tagged my credit card, including the florist. I opened a second folder after that. Messages and screenshots. Didn't even realize I had. Last summer, she accidentally opened a credit card in Lucas's name to pay for rent, and she texted me in a panic at midnight pleading for a $4,000 loan. I made the payment. She tells him, on one condition. Finally, she pledged she didn't. So I wrap everything up. There was a neat PDF file with several labels. Perhaps Lucas would like to know prior to the wedding. I then included a picture, one from last Thanksgiving. They told me not to come. Said the family was keeping it small this year. Funny, a friend of mine who was dating my cousin sent me a group pic later that night. Everyone was there laughing, drinking wine. Evan Lucas's lap, Mom's arms around them both, and in the corner of the photo taped to the fridge, a printed out copy of my old Instagram photo with the words, "Do not mention" scribbled across it in Sharpie. So yeah, I mailed Lucas the file track shipping and waited. He called me at 2:13 a.m. His first words were, "Tell me everything." I didn't recognize the number. The kind that pops up in the middle of the night and makes your heart thump in dread. I was lying in bed, laptop still warm on my legs, half scrolling, half hoping I could sleep through my birthday without any more humiliations. I took it up. Calm to calm, the voice said, "This is Lucas." Like a person standing in the ruins of something that was once lovely, was engaged. My back straightened. "Hello." A long silence. Then he spoke. I received the envelope, then another pause. How much of it is true is all I want to know. I took a while to respond. I didn't have to. Eventually, he was already aware of everything I said. Every silence, every screenshot, and every receipt. You own them all. Then, as if the air was finally forcing its way back into his lungs, he exhaled, I assumed. "Is it possible for us to meet?" Later that day, we sat across from one another at a peaceful coffee shop. Lucas had on a hoodie, faded jeans, and the appearance of a man who had just left a burning house instead of his typical watch and designer jacket. "You wasted no time," he said. "She told me you were mentally unstable. Claimed that you were erratic, that you had a dark side, that you visited the family due to some unidentified trauma, and that you were envious of her life." I remained motionless. I had heard worse. "She told me not to contact you," he continued. Said it would cause old wounds to reopen. He raised his head. There were no signs of old wounds on that envelope. You appeared to be cleaning the house. A folder was slid across the table by me. Everything he hadn't yet seen was inside. Emails in which I discussed deposits using fictitious names. At the client's request, a florist notes the remaining amount. Use of judgment. The invoice from the planner was marked anonymous donor, and the final page of his August emergency text. Can you send $4,000, please? I made a mistake. Later I will explain. Please don't tell Lucas. I mean it. Every word was read by him. Each line, quiet. Then he slowly closed the folder. Trembling fingers, only a little. She claimed that because you couldn't bear to see her happy, you declined to attend the engagement dinner. I laughed a little dryly. I received the incorrect date from her. I arrived 1 week early. The hostess informed me that the reservation was for next Friday after I had waited for 45 minutes at the restaurant. He tightened his jaw. For years, she deceived me. I added. At that point, though, I understood it was more than simple carelessness. Control was the issue. She was creating a world without me in it. And her most recent prop was you. Lucas reclined. She told me that because you had always been self-centered, you were distant from her close-knit family. I tapped the folder. Enough self-centeredness to cover half of her wedding expenses in secret. She was selfless enough to straighten out her financial mess while remaining silent for 5 years. He did something better, but he didn't respond. Lucas emailed all of the wedding guests at once that night. More than 180 individuals, including friends, relatives, suppliers, and even a few business names from his company. The wedding has been canceled. The reality. Email's body. A succinct, ruthless explanation. There will no longer be a wedding. Although the causes are personal, they have financial, emotional, familial, and deceptive roots. A lie won't be the foundation of my life. Any questions should be directed to Eva's family, as they are better able to provide an explanation than I ever could. The documentation is attached. Within hours, the family chat erupted after he attached my file receipts, screenshots, and the works. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were texting me. I didn't know, dude. I'm so sorry, Caleb. That was a mess. They actually told us that you simply fled and refused to make contact. I didn't reply to the majority, not with malice, just fatigue. Next came the calls from Eva and Mom, even from my aunt. I didn't respond, though. Not just yet. Until my phone came back to life, I put it on voicemail, Mom, but then again, a third time. Then the text arrived. It was unnecessary for you to go this far. You have ruined us. Are you content now? Before tightening, I gazed at the screen. No, I'm not content. Simply put, I'm free. She answered almost instantly. We informed Eve's fiancé of our obligation. I sent one more back because we wanted to keep the family safe. I was erased for the sake of optics. I let you see the truth. At that point, Dad arrived. I saw him pacing, angry, and slamming the buzzer outside my apartment building on the security camera. The intercom was picked up by me. Caleb opened the door for me. He let out a bark. We must speak. No, I said coolly. Your mom is crying. He wasn't eating. She feels ashamed. I spared her embarrassment. She made a fool of herself. She just kept the secret thanks to you. You've been vindictive all along. No, I interrupted. I've never said much. You simply didn't think I would stop. His hand slammed against the glass. You are no longer a member of this family. I grinned as well. But he was blind to it. At last I muttered some truth. He went out. I also slept through the night for the first time in a long time. They made an effort to act as if nothing had occurred. I wasn't finished yet, though. Their world didn't simply fall apart after Lucas sent that email. It fell apart. The wedding was called off. Venue fees are not refundable due to bounced checks. The florist criticized them on Instagram. The caterer left a digital trail of broken group chats and threatened to take her to small claims court if his bridesmaid squad abandoned her so quickly. That was only the surface, though, because you didn't just walk Lucas. He exploded. It turns out that he was more than just a handsome finance guy. He had a connection. With fingers and half the wedding vendors' portfolios, his family operated a mid-sized investment firm. When he pulled away, others came after them. If his name became the wedding industry's kryptonite within 72 hours. The calls then started. We must talk, Mom. I didn't respond. You've got your point, Dad. Come take care of this. What should be fixed? Their fictitious utopia. Their self-centered theatrical production. Thank you, but no. They made an effort to change course, told family members that everything was a misunderstanding, Lucas had gone too far, that things were twisted by me. However, it was too late. Their gaslighting was never as loud as the paper trail. The actual fallout followed. Do you recall the family account that was used to pay for the wedding? I wasn't merely a nameless contributor. The administrator was me. The instant my mother texted, I froze access. You don't exist, we told him. However, I am now. Was it lawful I took out every other dollar that was blocked due to a financial dispute? The bank had receipts despite an attempt to claim it was theft. The primary account didn't even have her name on it. It was a biblical meltdown. They lost more than $18,000. Not able to pay. The decorator. Guests who had paid in advance for their travel arrangements had to get their money back. They continued to blame me. Mom sent a text. You're being unkind. Eva is devastated. Heartbroken people apologize, I retorted. A cease and desist letter was sent by her. Yes, Eva attempted to sue me for libel. Her fiancé abandoned her. She was blacklisted by her vendors. However, it seems that I was the bad guy for being honest. It was a ridiculous letter. One of my college friends, my lawyer, owed me a favor. Reddit chuckled and gave a direct response. Bring it. We're prepared. She didn't. However, do you know who did get in touch with me? Lucas's mom. She thanked me in a handwritten letter on actual stationery. She claimed that although she had always had a hunch something wasn't right, she wasn't aware of how serious the lies were until she looked through my file. Claimed that I had saved their family from years of ruin. She sent me a check too. Not a symbolic one. A real tick, $10,000. A sign of deference, she wrote. Not charity, not sympathy. Simply acknowledging that you owed no one anything. You gave nonetheless. I framed it, but I didn't cash it. My family's situation quickly became problematic. A contract with one of Lucas's associates was lost by Dad. PR turns out to be bad for business. His close friends began to distance themselves from him. When half of your bridge group has seen the screenshots of you lying to your son for 5 years, it's difficult for Mom to regain her reputation in the community. Oh, you've fallen apart. She used all the typical jargon when she announced their breakup on social media. People can grow apart at times. The timing was simply off. I'm sending everyone love. The remarks were harsh. Sis, someone posted. Your family lied about having a brother, which is why he left you. Someone else wrote, but where's the cake? Then there was the thread on Reddit. Yes, the story was leaked to a relationship subreddit. More than 20,000 upvotes were generated. It was dubbed the ultimate form of sibling retaliation. This is what happens when the family scapegoat stops playing nice, one commenter wrote. The best part, though, comes next. I was knocked on my door a month after the explosion. It was either holding a Tupperware container with hunched shoulders, puffy eyes, and no makeup. She said, Mom made cake. We owe you one, she said when I arched an eyebrow. Maybe we could talk, I thought. I remained silent. I made a mistake, she added. There is still no sound. I trust them with everything, including you. I assumed your anger was unjustified. She started crying. I gave them a ratio. My wedding was still paid for by you. I examined the container. Carrot cake, my least favorite. I said, I don't want the cake. I want the apology. And I'm hoping you mean it. She gave a nod. Unsteady. I apologized for believing her, but I refused to let her in. Return when you understand how to establish a relationship that isn't predicated on keeping me hidden. I then softly shut the door. Not the way she treated me. I poured myself a drink later that night, not to celebrate, but to let out a breath, and threw the cake in the garbage. Because I wasn't angry for the first time in years, I didn't get hurt. The unseen person standing at the edge of family photos wasn't me. I had freedom. 7 months have gone by. It's been 7 months since I held a birthday cake on Eva's porch. I was told I had the wrong house after baking myself. My own mother texted me to say I didn't exist 7 months ago. I have been erasing my guilt for 7 months, in the same manner that they attempted to remove me. Retaliation is often described as bittersweet. I don't agree. It was sanitized, essential. Like removing glass from a wound that has been left to fester for years. You don't weep over the suffering, you simply feel relieved. The poison has been eliminated. My family no longer discusses me, not in public. I am aware of this since a college friend of ours told me that they met Dad at a charity event. When someone inquired about his children, he only mentioned one. Eva is my daughter. She's healing slowly. Don't bring me up. As usual. I don't need their lies to support my truth anymore, so that's okay. I purchased a modest 2-bedroom home in the mountains and relocated to a different city. Distant. Keep quiet. Calm. No staged brunches, no banners, and no whispering at the dinner table. Me and my work alone. Java is my dog's rescued mutt, and I decided to be silent. And I discovered clarity in that quiet. There is nothing that I regret. Not the money I froze, not the files I sent, not the facts I pried like toothed skeletons from their closets. If anything, I wish I hadn't waited so long. You see, I worked for years to gain what should have been unreserved respect, love, and recognition. I continued to attend Sunday dinners, funerals, and birthday celebrations in the hopes that they would remember me, but I was never invited. I was a convenience, a punching bag, a bank account, a victim of their own embarrassment. And their entire world collapsed when I stepped away from that role. I stopped supporting it not because I destroyed it. I received an envelope in the mail one morning last month. No return address is included in a photo. I was blowing out the candles at a birthday party when I was 9 years old. Eva was at my side. Behind the cake, Mom. Dad with a camcorder in his hand. They're all grinning on the back. There was writing in a shaky hand. That day we lost something. It might have been you. It might have been us. I apologize. No signature. I didn't require one. I set it on fire in the hearth, not because I was angry, but because that little boy was no longer there. At a table where seats were always assigned the person who never stopped trying to earn scraps, I no longer require a seat. I constructed the table myself, and now there are actual people sitting around it. Pals who remain unflinching when I bring up my past. Coworkers who value my work without inquiring about my ancestry. I met a partner 6 weeks ago who was fully aware of the situation and never once suggested that it might not have been as bad as it was. I've finished downplaying it. Eva sent me an email a few weeks ago with the subject, "Do you hate me?" I didn't respond. It's not that I despise her, rather I don't invest in ghosts because hate demands investment. They have my forgiveness, for me, not for them, because I'm creating something too lovely to be burdened by dead weight, and anger is heavy. I had my first birthday celebration in years last week. I prepared my own cake and invited friends. Bourbon buttercream with vanilla, many thanks. Candles were present. Laughter, nobody inquired. Where is your family, since they were aware of the solution? I wasn't born into the same family, it's the one that I made. Furthermore, I didn't hope for their love forgiveness or sudden insight when I extinguished those candles. All I can hope for is more days like these where I live. In full, quite loudly, without apology, because in reality I was never the issue. All I was the mirror. They also found their own reflection intolerable, so they made an attempt to smash it. I didn't break, though. I sharpened. And I don't vanish now. I completely recovered myself. Story 3. We need to make some cuts, I told my family on my 30th birthday. I can't continue to pay for everything indefinitely. Then start with your brother's 6-figure debt, Dad said, rolling his eyes. I declined. My belongings were on the porch when I returned. The locks were replaced. Consider what you did. I didn't cause a scene, they said. I remained silent. Simply schedule the message. Everything changed the following morning. Cheers to your birthday. Josh. My mother's tone was upbeat and phony, as if she hadn't just made me feel bad for not volunteering to pay off Kyle's auto loan an hour before. At the end of the dining table was where I sat. In front of me was a piece of store-bought cake. A crooked 30-candle drips, half-melted wax. With one arm casually slung over the chair, my dad was slouching across from me. One is drinking a beer. With one hand, my 28-year-old brother Kyle, who is unemployed and seemingly allergic to responsibility, was texting while using the other to browse through his phone. His brand new iPhone, naturally. The one I purchased. I cleared my throat and said that. Despite my racing heart, I made an effort to sound composed. We must discuss the money. Dad gave a grunt. Mom blinked. Carl didn't raise his head. I can't keep going over what I said again. My goal is to create a future for myself. Here I've been paying for groceries, utilities, and the mortgage. Kyle I paid off. Last year I received a second DUI fine. I have to make some cuts. Carl raised his head. Next? You're behaving as though it's charity. I gazed at him. Yes, it is, he chuckled. Whoa, all right. Dad leaned forward after that. People squinted as if I had just insulted the Pope. Then begin with the 6-figure debt owed by your brother. Isn't that the true problem? Mom shot him a sidelong glance as if she wished he hadn't spoken. Carl froze. I refuse to pay that. Silently, I said, "I'm not in charge of that." The room became chilly. Nobody made a move. Dad reclined once more, lips quivering into a sneer-like expression. "I guess we know where you stand," he said. The following day, when I returned from work, everything I owned, clothes, books, tools, and the laptop I used for freelancing was arranged neatly on the porch. They had replaced the locks. The door was taped with a note. "Consider what you did." It said nothing more. I gazed at the handwriting for a considerable amount of time. My mom is neat, accurate, and unmistakable. I didn't knock. I didn't shout. I refrained from crying. I inhaled deeply, gathered my belongings, and left. I scheduled the message after that. After a birthday eviction and a note that felt like a slap, everything changed the following morning to help us understand how we got here. You would need to go back a decade. Carl totaled his first car when I was 20 years old. Intoxicated naturally. Mom broke down. I, the golden oldest son with a reliable job and no criminal history, paid the tow fee and gave Dad a loan of $3,000 for repairs after he screamed. He never reimbursed it. Originally intended to be a one-time occurrence, it somehow turned into a pattern. I was to blame for Kyle's college dropout because I failed to assist him with his studies. When he experienced 3 job losses in a year, when he overdrafted his account, I received a lecture about how some people simply struggle more. My mother calls me guilt-laced and gentle. "He's your brother Josh, my dear. Can't you just cover it this once?" And I always did. I paid the rent when Kyle got evicted. I paid the insurance on his car. A car I walked to work and he drove to parties. While Kyle spent his days in the basement working on music and doing nothing productive, I paid for groceries, paid our parents' property taxes when they fell behind, and still managed to pay for night classes to earn my electrical systems certification. The worst thing, he didn't even act appreciative. He even pretended that he was entitled to it. "Josh is doing very well," waving his hand as if I were a faceless ATM, he would say. "He's got it. Big brothers are there for that." My folks made it up. I had the option to move out. It ought to have. However, my mother would cry every time I brought it up and say, "This house only feels like a home with you in it." Don't be dramatic and remind me that I only paid a portion of the bills, such as paying for everything, but the phone plan wasn't sufficient, Dad would say. Kyle too. "Why leave when you've got it so good?" He would smirk. Yes, I had a nice time. My brother borrowed money from me to purchase new headphones while I worked 60-hour weeks and hardly saw the light of day. Dad used my paycheck to fix the air conditioner while I skipped lunches to save money. He told me to be thankful that I didn't have to deal with a landlord. 2 months prior to my birthday, everything came to a head. I discovered Kyle hosting a party after returning home from a 14-hour shift. In the living room, I had my gaming PC, which I had been building over the course of 5 years, connected to his sound system. On the couch, his friends were unconscious. Bottles of beer were all over the floor. I had a sticky keyboard. I didn't shout. I simply disconnected everything and returned to my room. Mom gave me a lecture the following morning. "You made him feel ashamed," she said sharply. "His friend caught you acting like a crazy person." I said they were using my belongings. She yelled, "It's not just your house." Here everything is shared. That word spread, like a slap to me, shared. Similar to the mortgage I paid, I literally had money taken out of my account for the groceries I purchased and the electricity bill. That evening, I reviewed my spending plan. I was very near. I could actually get out this time with just a few more months of saving. Kyle then came up with the brilliant idea of trading cryptocurrency as a new business. Of his student loans, he invested $25,000. He lost it in 2 weeks due to loans he had no intention of repaying. He placed the blame on his friends, the market, and the app. He then faced me. He said, "You could spot me 10 grand. As if he needed a lift to the shop to help me get back on course. I chuckled, and I declined for the first time in a long time. The tone changed at that point. I was no longer trustworthy. I was elitist, ungrateful, and self-centered. "Do you believe that you are now superior to us?" one evening after supper, that person asked. "Simply because you have some cash on hand." I said, "I'm not better. I'm simply worn out." Kyle tweeted early the following morning. He hoped I wouldn't notice. "However, some only give when they believe they can manipulate you. Cut them off and see their real selves." More than 300 people liked him. I said nothing at all. When my birthday finally arrived, I foolishly and naively believed that perhaps just possibly we could maintain good relations. No drama, a small cake, and a quiet dinner. I received an ambush instead. Dad watched me the entire time. You're daring me to mention money. Kyle is making jokes about how I should open up my non-existent trust fund. Mom's smile is too bright, as if she had enough strength to prevent it all from exploding. Let's cheer. Finally, I admitted that I couldn't continue to pay for everything. The dam broke. Then begin with your sibling. Debt of 6 figures. Not as a joke, though, as an expectation rather than a challenge. They also didn't argue when I said no. They simply tossed me out like trash. However, they made a single error. They failed to remember. He instilled in me the values of patience, silence, and never reacting. Because I had a plan this time. Their note went unanswered by me, didn't knock, did not send a text, did not cry. I simply loaded my belongings into my old Toyota's back seat, packed my bags, and drove to the most affordable motel I could find. The vending machine eats your money without regret, one of those roadside ones where the air smells like cigarettes. With the note still crumpled in my fist, I sat on the edge of the bed. Consider what you did. Yes, I did. I gave it a lot of thought. I scheduled the message after that. You see, I've learned a few things over the years. One is that each family has its own legend and myth. They tell themselves. This is how ours went. The reliable one is Josh. Josh always lends a hand. Josh is always there. We can do anything we want because he always shows up. They didn't know. For the previous 2 years, I had been keeping a record of everything. Each and every invoice transfer and Venmo request. I keep the receipt for every time I give someone a handout. Every guilt trip, every passive-aggressive message. You're being dramatic every time they say that. I requested that boundaries be recorded, saved, and dated. Then there was the letter I wrote just before my birthday several months ago. When I first began to consider leaving, what if I did, it was not a letter of farewell. It was an all-out confession, how I concealed the second mortgage payment from them. Because I, not the bank, received the call. How I found out Kyle had stolen my identity to apply for a $15,000 personal loan. Refused. Thank God. But the inquiry was still on my credit report. How my parents knew and asked me not to press charges. Family sticks together, they said. I stuck until I didn't. That morning, the morning after I got thrown out of the house I paid for, I pressed send. I didn't just send it to them. I sent it to our extended family. My godmother in Tampa, Uncle Dave in New Jersey, my mom's cousins, dad's siblings, their church group, everyone, along with the receipts, screenshots, bank records, text messages, voice recordings, all neatly organized. I even included a spreadsheet titled, What Josh Actually Paid For. It went viral within our family and under an hour. By noon, my phone was melting. 26 missed calls from mom, 8 from dad called. Didn't call. He sent one text. You didn't have to do that. That was cold. I didn't respond. At 12:37 p.m., my Aunt Maria, who I hadn't seen in years, sent me a message. Good for you. I always knew they were using you. Proud of you, sweetheart. Then came the fallout. Apparently my parents' reputation in their little suburban bubble meant more to them than I thought. The image of the perfect, close-knit, morally upright family shattered. People started asking questions. Why was Josh footing the bill while Kyle went on vacations? Why did the note on the door look like something out of a Lifetime movie? Why did Kyle have new headphones, sneakers, and tattoos while unemployed? Why did Josh live in the basement like a tenant when he was paying for everything? Dad tried to spin it. We were giving him structure, he told one relative. It was all agreed upon. Wrong move, unattached. The recording from the night they kicked me out. I'd been recording on my phone. Slipped into my jacket pocket before dinner. The voice note was crystal clear. Dad, then start with your brother's debt. Me. I'm not paying that, Dad. Then get out, Mom. Consider what you did. They couldn't spin that. The kicker. I also reported the stolen identity case. I'd let it slide the first time. Not anymore. When the police showed up at the house to ask Kyle about the fraudulent loan attempt, things got loud. A neighbor caught it on video. Yelled voices, a slammed door. Kyle shouting something about how he deserved a break. Someone, probably my mom, screamed, "We told you not to make this worse." That clip landed on the local neighborhood Facebook group. And just like that, the family who used to whisper about other people's drama became the front page gossip. I was not present when it occurred. Moving into my new flat kept me too busy. An apartment above a downtown flower shop. Morning sun that is quiet. A kitchen free of the odor of old quarrels. That night, I used the money I should have been saving all along to pay the deposit. With just my laptop and some takeaway and no TV, I sat on the couch and watched the mayhem from a distance. When I didn't answer, they made numerous attempts to call me again. Mom arrived at my workplace. She waited in the entrance hall, red-eyed with my favorite casserole in a Tupperware container, as if that would reverse years of use. We met outside. I stopped her before she could open her mouth. I said, "I'm not going back. Be calm. Cold even." She whispered, "Josh, this family is being torn apart by you." I said, "I just stopped holding it together," and laughed. She winced. I also didn't feel bad for once. It changed at that point. Not only the dynamics within the family, me. At last I could see them clearly, not as defenseless parents, not as a frail brother, but as individuals who had to make decisions. Several times, and now they had to deal with the fallout. For the first time in my life, it's odd how quiet can seem louder than yelling. I wasn't waking up to the sound of my dad banging cabinets like he was having a fit while wearing a polo shirt, or Kyle's music shaking the plasterboard. And I wasn't avoiding my mother's passive-aggressive outbursts in anticipation of the next emotional bomb. Rather, I experienced silence in the mornings. I didn't check to see if anyone had used the last of the milk when I made coffee. I wouldn't have to worry about my wallet going missing for no apparent reason if I left it on the counter. Every purchase, every boundary, and every breath didn't need to be justified by me. Nobody requested money. Nobody asked for an explanation. No one sent me a manipulative text. At first it was confusing. I kept thinking that the quiet would end, that when I walked in the door, Kyle would be sprawled out on my couch, his shoes on the cushions, and he would ask me if I could see him again. However, they never arrived. The calls continued, I see. Not initially. Mom's voice was shaky and carefully layered with guilt in her lengthy voicemails. "This isn't you, Josh. You have always been the one with strength." The assistant, "Don't let pride destroy our family, please." Dad texted once. "Only one. You should be proud of who you are." I didn't answer. The messages eventually slowed and eventually stopped. I received a handwritten letter from Kyle 3 weeks after I moved out. It was surprisingly brief. "I am aware of my error. I was simply doing what I was always permitted to do. Now, though, everything is against me. Both parents are in disarray. We no longer hear from anyone. You blew everything up. I hope it was worthwhile. Don't apologize. Simply assign blame." They provided me with all the information I required. I didn't respond. I started working on restoring what they had attempted to take away from me instead. We need help with the bills this month, so I decided to sign up for a coding boot camp, something I'd wanted to do for years but kept putting off. I began working as a freelancer in the evenings, saving for my desired future. Not the one who coerces me into giving money. I made some true friends, the kind of people who only asked for honesty, people who didn't give a damn about my earnings. The way I was, I joined a climbing gym in my area. I rediscovered my passion for risk-taking and movement, pushing myself to the limit, not transporting people who wouldn't move. Additionally, therapy was helpful. It turns out that being the fixer for years leaves invisible bruises. It was referred to as parental fixation by my therapist. When a youngster is supposed to act like an adult both financially and emotionally, she showed me that I was never self-centered. I was worn out. They collapsed back at the old house in the meantime. Mom had to return to her job. She detested it. She had been using someone else's money to play house manager for the past 10 years. Dad began to drink more. He apparently got into a heated argument with a neighbor who inquired about Josh's predicament. I've heard that Kyle has finally found employment at a petrol station. The duration was 6 days. The manager was then held accountable. As usual, the extended family withdrew. They had witnessed too much pain. The evidence did not support the myth of our contented little family. I also didn't give a damn. I wasn't trying to fix it for the first time in my life. I was not present at Thanksgiving. I spent it with family and friends, those who didn't tread carefully and instead laughed at the dinner table. I brought pie. They meant it when they referred to me as family. My godmother gave me a card for Christmas. There was a brief note inside. "You were worthy of better, and at last you asserted it. You have my admiration." Reading it made me cry. Not because I was depressed, because I felt seen for the first time. After you burn your old life to the ground, do you know what happens? Nothing. No spectacular explosions, no reconciliations at the last minute. Nothing but quiet. And I've never heard anything so beautiful. My phone didn't ring with last-minute requests for money or guilt-laced texts for the first time in 30 years. There were no urgent calls about Kyle's license being revoked, about Dad needing help with taxes he didn't anticipate, or about Mum sobbing because we no longer feel like a family. They anticipated my stumbling return. They did it every time. They believed that I would feel bad. They believed I would feel isolated. But this is what really took place. I was liberated. I was able to breathe. I was able to stand by myself. The one I purchased, I'm clean furnished and unconcerned about food theft, key theft, or future demands. I've spent so much time carrying my family around that I've forgotten what it's like to stand up straight, for my own sake, to be unnecessary. I was once referred to as the family's backbone. No, the fuse was me, as well as now that I've left. There is nowhere left for the fire they started around me to spread. But let's go back to them. I met Kyle 2 months after the explosion. It was at a petrol station, of course. Behind the counter was him. Name tag. Sunken, crooked eye still exuded that phony swagger, but it appeared shabby, like a poor imitation of a more successful version of himself. "Josh," he grinned. "I was surprised to see you in town." I simply nodded. He leaned closer. "You realize that you truly messed up for them?" I blinked. "You're referring to the time I stopped covering your debt." He gave a shrug. "The fallout is still affecting them. You truly created a mess." I gave him a direct look. "You think that by making my life better, I'm destroying yours?" He stared at the door as if he couldn't believe the ATM had left after I paid for my gas. He's still not understanding. Not one of them does. Because Kyle and others like him don't learn from mistakes. Not until the funds are exhausted and the publicity wanes. And I'm not going to stay to see that lesson unfold. The thing is this, nobody talks to you about leaving a toxic family. The pain is not in the distance. It's the knowledge that you've never experienced unconditional love. You were appreciated for your sacrifice and your silence, your financial account. However, love isn't love without respect, it's leverage. So would you ever speak to them again when they ask? No, I don't hesitate. For the first time, I love myself more than their acceptance. I used to want their approval, similar to oxygen. Every promotion, every loan I paid back, every good grade. A frantic wish that perhaps they would notice me this time. However, they only saw my ability to help them. I was never beneath it. I see myself now, a man who settled 3 non-existent mortgages. He never tried, but a man stayed up late to tutor his brother. A man who always felt like a visitor in a home that kept the lights on. And lastly, a man who stopped talking. I've started over in my new life, and guilt or obligation aren't the basis this time. There is peace. It's a decision. I own it. On the weekends, I go hiking, read, and attend classes. I'm taking photography lessons. For years, I put this off because I had more important things to pay for. I'm dating someone who asks about my day, doesn't call me selfish for setting boundaries, and doesn't need saving. I occasionally lie in bed late at night thinking about the child. I was once the one who walked carefully through his own house, who ceremoniously gave him his paycheck, and who thought that if you worked hard enough, they would love you properly. "And you left," I whispered. "You succeeded. They are unknown to you." No more silence. Allow them to rumor. Permit them to embellish the tale. Let them say I'm not thankful, dramatic, chilly, because this is the reality. Without me, they will never say it aloud. Without me, their system fell apart. Without me, their lives were not the same. At last, the truth was spoken aloud, unquestionably raw. I didn't even need to shout. I simply turned to leave. Additionally, leaving the door locked can occasionally be the most subdued act of rebellion.